Good morning or good afternoon, football fans. Big Al here on this football Sunday. It is October 6, 2024, and welcome to the Week 6 NFL Injury Report, dropping now 30 minutes after the actives and inactives from all the Sunday games have been named. And there is one game that is ongoing, and that is the Jets and the Vikings, currently in the fourth quarter with Minnesota leading 17-10. So we'll go through their injury report as well. And starting off with the New York Jets, defensive tackle Leki Fotu is doubtful with a hamstring. Tackle Morgan Moses is out with a knee. And linebacker C.J. Mosley is doubtful with a toe. There was one name listed on the Vikings injury report, and that's tight end T.J. Hawkinson out with a knee. But we do have some late-breaking injury news involving the Vikings, as running back Aaron Jones has been ruled out for the rest of the game with the Jets after suffering a hip injury in the first half earlier. Now to the Browns and the Commanders, and it's a pretty big list for Cleveland. Running back Nick Chubb is out with a knee. Then you've got tackle Jack Conklin, questionable with a hamstring. Guard Michael Dunn is questionable due to illness. Linebacker Jordan Hicks out with an elbow and ribs. Running back Nyheim Hines out today with a knee. Tackle James Hudson also out with a shoulder. And tight end David Njoku is questionable with an ankle. Also for the Browns, running back Pierre Strong is questionable with a hamstring. Tackle Jedrick Wills is questionable with a knee. And defensive end Alex Wright is out with a triceps injury. For Washington, guard Nick Allegretti is questionable with an ankle. Wide receiver Noah Brown out with a groin. Safety Percy Butler is questionable with a groin. Defensive end Cillian Farrell is out with a knee. Linebacker Jordan McGee is doubtful with a knee. Quarterback Marcus Mariota is questionable with a pectoral injury. Defensive end Efe Obada is doubtful with a tibia and a fibula. Safety Tyler Owens is questionable with a shin, and running back Brian Robinson questionable with a knee. Alright, to the Panthers at the Bears, we'll start with Carolina, and they have some names on here. Wide receiver Jalen Coker is questionable with a foot. Linebacker Shaq Thompson is out with an Achilles, and I think he's out for the rest of the year. Defensive end Charles Harris is questionable with a shoulder. Guard Robert Hunt is questionable with a hip. Cornerback Dane Jackson is questionable with a hamstring. Linebacker Josie Jewell is out today with a hamstring and a groin. Safety Andrew Ryan is out with a concussion. Tight end Ian Thomas is questionable with a calf. And defensive tackle Shy Tuttle is questionable with a foot. For Chicago, wide receiver DeAndre Carter is questionable with ribs. Likewise with tackle Tevin Jenkins. I almost called him Tavin. Defensive tackle Zach Pickens out with a groin. And cornerback Terrell Smith is out with a hip. Ravens, Bengals, starting off with Baltimore. Running back Rasheen Ali, questionable with a neck. Wide receiver Deontay Hardy is questionable with a knee. Cornerback Arthur Mollett is out with a knee and a hamstring. And guard Andrew Voorhees is questionable with an ankle. For Cincinnati, quarterback Mike Hilton, questionable with a knee. Likewise for defensive tackle McKinney Jackson. Defensive end Miles Murphy is also questionable with a knee. Meanwhile, defensive tackle Sheldon Rankins has been downgraded to doubtful with a hamstring. Bills at Texans in perhaps the game of the day across the NFL. We'll start with Buffalo. Linebacker Terrell Bernard, questionable with a pectoral. Defensive tackle Austin Johnson, out today with an oblique. Cornerback Teron Johnson, questionable with a forearm. Defensive tackle Ed Oliver, safety Taylor Rapp, and wide receiver Khalil Shakir are all out. Oliver has a hamstring injury, Rapp has a concussion, and Shakir has an ankle. For Houston, linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair is questionable due to illness. Defensive end Derek Barnett is out with a shoulder. Linebacker Jake Hansen, questionable with a back injury. Defensive tackle Kurt Hinish is questionable with a calf. Defensive end Dylan Horton is questionable with an illness. Tackle Titus Howard is questionable with a hamstring. Defensive end Jerry Hughes is out with a hip. Running back Joe Mixon is out with an ankle, so that's not going to fare well for the Texans. Their backup running back Dameon Pierce is questionable with a hamstring. And wide receiver Robert Woods is questionable with a foot. Colts at Jaguars. For Indianapolis, center Ryan Kelly is questionable with a neck. Cornerback Kenny Moore II is out with a hip. Defensive end Kwity Paye is out with a quad. Quarterback Anthony Richardson is questionable with an oblique, although I don't think he will play in this game. Tackle Braden Smith is questionable with a knee. Running back Jonathan Taylor is out with an ankle. And cornerback Samuel Womack is questionable with an illness. And for Jacksonville, linebacker Yasir Abdullah is questionable with a neck. Tight end Evan Ingram is questionable with a hamstring. Linebacker Devin Lloyd is questionable with a knee. And safeties Darnell Savage and Daniel Thomas are both listed as questionable. Savage has a quad injury while Thomas has a hamstring. Dolphins and Patriots. Wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. is listed as questionable as a knee, but according to many circles, he will play today. Safety Jordan Poyer is out with a shin. Cornerback Cam Smith is questionable with a hamstring. And backup quarterback Skylar Thompson is questionable with ribs. If he doesn't go, it looks like we'll get Huntley once again. For New England, and they have a long list, beginning with wide receiver Kendrick Bourne. He's questionable with a knee. Safety Kyle Duggar is questionable with an ankle. Linebacker Anthony Jennings is questionable with a shoulder. Cornerback Jonathan Jones is also questionable with a shoulder. Cornerback Marcus Jones, no relation to Jonathan, is questionable with a groin. Guard Mike Jordan is questionable with an ankle. Likewise for center Nick Leverett. Tackle Vidarian Lowe is questionable with a knee. Safety Marte Mapu is questionable with a calf. Wide receiver KJ Osborne questionable with a shoulder. Same for safety Jabril Peppers. Guard Layden Robinson is questionable with an ankle and a wrist. And linebacker Sion Takitaki is doubtful with a knee. On to the late games, beginning with the Cardinals at the 49ers. For Arizona, you have guard Isaiah Adams, who's out with a thumb. Tackle Kelvin Beachum, questionable with a hamstring. Tackle Christian Jones, questionable with an ankle. Tight end Trey McBride, questionable with ribs. Kicker Matt Prater, questionable with a left knee. Defensive tackle Kairis Tunga, questionable with a knee. And cornerback Garrett Williams out with a groin. For San Francisco, wide receiver Chris Conley is doubtful with an oblique. Wide receiver Jacob Cowing is questionable with a shoulder. Defensive tackle Kalia Davis is questionable with a knee. Linebacker Demetrius Flanagan Fowles is out with a calf. Defensive end Yetur Gross Models is out with a knee. Tight end George Kittle, questionable with ribs. Linebacker Fred Warner, questionable with an ankle. And cornerback Isaac Yiadom is questionable with a thigh. On to the Raiders and Broncos, starting with Vegas. Wide receiver Davante Adams. In the news this past week, him possibly being traded out of Vegas. He's out today with a hamstring. Defensive end Max Crosby, questionable with an ankle. That's a pretty big one. Linebacker Divine Diablo, questionable with an oblique. Linebacker Luke Masterson, out with a knee. Linebacker Kenai Mwaga, questionable with a calf. Tight end Michael Mayer is out today due to a personal matter, not injury related. Running back Tyreek McAllister, questionable with a shoulder. Tackle Thayer Munford Jr. is out today with a knee and an ankle. Guard Dylan Parham is questionable with an Achilles. Cornerback Decamarion Richardson, he's out with a hamstring. Safety Trey Taylor also out with a knee. And same for running back Zamir White, he's out with a groin. Only one injury to talk about for the Denver Broncos, and that's running back Tyler Batty. He's out today with a back. Giants at Seahawks. For New York, linebacker Matthew Adams is questionable with a quadricep. Cornerback Adoree Jackson, questionable with a calf. Wide receiver Malik Neighbors, this is a big one for the Giants. He's out with a concussion. Cornerback Andrew Phillips is questionable with a calf. And running back Devin Singletary is doubtful with a groin. Just a few to talk about for Seattle. Safety Julian Love is questionable with a thigh. Linebacker Boye Mafe is questionable with a knee. Defensive tackle Byron Murphy II, he is out today with a hamstring. And defensive tackle Cameron Young is out with a knee. On to the Packers and the Rams. For Green Bay, you've got linebacker Adrian Cooper, questionable with a hip. Wide receiver Romeo Doubs is doubtful due to a personal matter. Defensive tackle Jonathan Ford is questionable with a calf. Guard Elgin Jenkins is questionable with a knee. Tackle Jordan Morgan is questionable with a shoulder. Tight end Luke Musgrave is questionable with an ankle. Cornerback Carrington Valentine, he's questionable with an ankle as well. News not all good for wide receiver Christian Watson. He's doubtful with an ankle. And defensive tackle Devon Wyatt is also out today with an ankle. Only two players for the Rams. Wide receiver Cooper Kupp out with an ankle. And defensive tackle Laurel Murchison. He's out with a forearm and a foot. Cowboys and Steelers later tonight. For Dallas, cornerback Kalen Carson is questionable with a shoulder. Wide receiver Brandon Cooks is out with a knee, so he's not playing tonight. Cornerback Trayvon Diggs is questionable with an ankle. Linebacker Maurice Luafo is questionable with a quadricep. And this is a rather big one. Defensive end Micah Parsons out with an ankle. For Pittsburgh, you've got linebacker Alex Highsmith. He's out with a groin. Linebacker Jeremiah Moon is questionable with an ankle. Defensive tackle Larry Ogunjobi is questionable with a groin. Running back Cordell Patterson is out with an ankle. Tight end Michael Pruitt is out with a knee. Running back Jaylen Warren also out with a knee. And backup quarterback Russell Wilson is questionable with a calf. We may end up with Justin Fields for a 5th straight game for the Steelers. And then tomorrow night with the Saints and the Chiefs, we'll begin with New Orleans. Linebacker Willie Gay Jr. is out with a hand. Tight end Taysom Hill is out with a rib. Guard Shane Lemieux is out with an ankle. Guard Lucas Patrick is questionable with a groin. Both center Cesar Ruiz and defensive end Peyton Turner are out with knee injuries. And linebacker Pete Werner is questionable with a hamstring. And just a couple for the Kansas City Chiefs. Running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire is doubtful with an illness. And wide receiver Mecole Hardman is questionable with a knee. And that's a look at your Week 6, or rather Week 5 NFL injury report, as we are now about 40 minutes away from kickoff of the 6 early games coming up, among them including the Bills and the Texans and the Ravens and Bengals. And then we'll have 4 games later on this afternoon, highlighted by the Packers and the Rams. Then there's Sunday Night Football with the Cowboys and Steelers. And Monday Night Football tomorrow night with the Saints and Chiefs. We'll be back tomorrow with a look at the latest college football rankings. And there's going to be some major shakeups in both polls, primarily the AP poll, where we saw 4 top 10 teams lose, including 2 in the top 5. So I'll reveal those polls tomorrow. I'll be on probably at about 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, so watch for that. Then the Week 5 recap from the NFL is coming up in the week that was on Tuesday. Then we'll look at the Week 7 college football television schedule on Wednesday. And I'll make my NFL picks straight up against the spread. Plus have the injury report for the Thursday night contest with the 49ers and Seahawks. That's coming on Thursday, so join me all this week for that. Like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. Big Al signing off. Thanks for watching and enjoy the pigskin. Peace out. Okay. Time for my second cup. All right.